Interviews. So today I'm at Sullivan Hall helping my girlfriend film something for a play she's in, some promotional material. Part of that is interviewing some of the cast members and people involved. And it got me thinking about what it is about the interview format that you need to know and how to do it. So today we're talking about interviews. First, we need to establish that there are two kinds of interviews. A more interactive interview where you usually have three angles, one of one subject, another of another subject, and then a third wide angle showing both subjects talking to each other. Those are quite common on talk shows or podcasts. And the second kind of interview you have is a more focused interview where you usually have one or two angles just of the person who is talking. Now, you'll usually find those in documentaries. So you just got to make sure to set up your angles accordingly to what kind of interview you're going for. And we'll talk about specifically camera placement a little bit later in the video. Lighting is an important part of all kinds of video, and that goes for the interview as well. Now, obviously for things like podcasts, audio-based, visual isn't as important, but you still want to be able to see the subject and see what they look like. Now, that doesn't just mean setting up lights, because if it's inside, you obviously want to set up a few soft boxes to get a bit of light, but if it's outside, that can mean putting an ND filter on the camera to make the sun less harsh. I have an ND filter on the camera now, and if I took it off, it would look like this, and this looks horrible. So if you're doing an interview outside and you want to have that blurred background, you're going to want to use an ND filter. Here's an example of an interactive interview that I filmed inside with lighting, a focused interview with indoor lighting, and then a focused interview with outdoor lighting. All different kinds of interviews, and they need to be lit accordingly. Now, talking about the background and ND filters, the reason you want to put an ND filter on is so you can keep a wide open aperture and get a blurry background, a nice bokeh effect. The background is kind of important in an interview. You don't want it to be too distracting, but you also don't want it to be too plain and boring. For example, I'm out here, which is, I don't want all this background stuff, so I used a more zoomed in lens to get a nicer frame. Same goes with interviews. You want to be more zoomed in, be more focused, not have too much background stuff. You zoom in, you get a blurry background, it looks so much better. I mean, look at all this. You got in the sun, it's just, it has to be close. Bring it back, close. So you're going to want to generally have something in the background, but have it blurred out so you can tell that they're in front of something, but you don't get distracted by what's behind them. In this interview, for example, the writer of a play is talking in front of a rehearsal of that play, and you can kind of see a bit of that in the background. Editing is a big part of any video, but when you have interviews, you usually have a lot of dead weight, a lot of answers that go on and on and on, and you need to cut it down. Even in this video, I'm cutting down a lot. But you want to make sure that you ask good questions so that your answers come out good, concise, and well worded, because then you don't have to edit as much. A video that's less edited, it just feels more natural and it's more pleasuring to watch. So make sure you've got good questions that just get to the point. Don't give them any space to waffle on. And if they are waffling on, that's fine, but just re-ask the question in a more pointed fashion. The audio, man. You hear that? That's a car going in the background and everything else. So another thing is audio. You just want to make sure that you're either miking them up with a lapel mic, or that you're recording when there aren't any cars driving past, or there's not too much noise in the background, like that bird. Sometimes having background noise is good because it shows that they're in an atmosphere, but you still want that isolated audio of them giving answers. Now, finally, we talk about camera placement. Now, this is in relation to the 180-degree rule. When a subject interacts with any other subject or object, see, planes. You always got to just wait for the plane to fly over. It's boring and it takes time, but you need that audio. Now, the 180-degree rule basically says that whenever a subject in video interacts with another subject or an object, it creates an action line between those two things. And you always want the camera to be on one side of the action line. Basically, when going between two angles in an interview, you want the eye lines to be in opposite direction. So for example, in this interview with me and my friend Connor, our eye lines are both opposite facing. However, in a super early version of the podcast that we filmed, I didn't set up the cameras properly, and our eye lines are facing the same way. So even though the interview cuts between two angles, it looks and feels a bit weird because the camera placement isn't correct. When you're filming a more focused, pointed interview and you have two angles of a subject, you want them to be looking either side of both cameras. You don't want them to be looking between the two. If you're standing on one side of both cameras see the eye line in one direction. However, if you're in the middle, one camera sees the eye line going this way and the other camera sees the eye line going this way, and it isn't super noticeable to general viewers, but it's something that you want to stay away from. So there you have it. That's really what you need to know when it comes to interviews, how to film them, the lighting, camera placement, questions, editing. It's all a part of it that's important, but when you do it right, it turns out to be an interview that interests the audience and it looks good. So there you go. Alright, that's that. I want to try and do more of this where I kind of sit down and talk about some camera tutorials or tips or advice or whatever I have, you know, just because this is what I do, filmmaking, and I've got some things to say about it, so let me know if you like that. And thank you for watching. Follow and like and subscribe and everything else. I will see you next time. Bye bye.